Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Seviour and I'm one of the teachers at Ruishton School. Now Sycamore class, this is completely for you guys. I really miss you all so much. Parents, thank you for the photos and videos and bits of work you've been sending me. Keep sending it my way. It's been great to see what everyone's been up to. So it looks like we're going to be at home for a bit longer than we first thought. So I cannot wait any longer to find out what happens next in our class text, The Explorer by Katherine Rundell. And I'd feel so guilty if I was to read ahead without you guys. So I thought I'd record myself reading it on YouTube for you guys to listen in. Now, Erin has been fantastic and she's written a summary of everything that's happened so far. So if you've forgotten or you're not in my class and you'd like to be involved with this, go onto the Ruishton School website, click on the Sycamore class page where you'll find Erin's summary to get you up to speed. So this next chapter is called At the Top of the Cliff. Let's find out what happens. A great cliff rose up from the jungle, covered in vines. It was 50 times as tall as Fred. The rock face would have been grey, but it was so covered in foliage that it seemed to rise from the earth like a growing thing, a great green extension of the jungle floor. That's what the black square meant, breathed Fred. Oh no, whispered Con. I don't want to do this. Lila's hand, clutching back on her shoulder, was shaking. Fred, could you climb that? Fred swallowed. Definitely, he lied. He stared at the great green expanse. It would be like climbing a green cathedral, he thought. We all could. There will be so many handholds, it will be like climbing a ladder. Max can't climb ladders, said Lila. Then one of us could strap him to their back with lianas, said Fred. I just don't think, began Con, but Fred had never wanted anything as much as he wanted to know what was at the top of that cliff. Where would we go if we turned back now? He said. Lila bit down on one of her plaits. Her jaw was rigid with fear, but her gaze was steady. We've got to try, haven't we? There might be someone up there who can get us home. They moored the raft and picked their way through the jungle towards the cliff. The trees grew so thickly they had to force their way between them, and even though it was barely 200 metres, it took fully half an hour of hauling Max over the tree trunks and navigating under branches lined with vicious thorns. Fred stood at the foot of the cliff and laid a hand on it. The rock was warm to the touch and uneven. Good for finding handholds, he thought. The vines that coated it looked strong. He tugged on a handful of thin lianas. They didn't tear. See? It'll be just like climbing the rope up at school, in gym lessons, he said. It'll be simple. I hate climbing the rope, said Con. So no, actually, it's not simple. I could go up by myself, said Fred, and shout down what's up there. Lila shook her head. She looked suddenly much older than the rest of them, and stern. You never split up in unfamiliar territory, she said. We're coming with you. She unwound Backer from the crook of her elbow and settled him securely on the back of her neck, looping her plaits around his body to keep him moored. But I can't carry Max. We'd both die. I can take him on my back. Fred tried to banish any hint of doubt from his voice. Doesn't Max get to choose? Max says he won't, said Max. No, said Lila. The stern look became sterner. You don't get to choose. I almost never make you do things you don't want to do at home, Max. But you have to do this. No. Yes, we're going to tie you onto Fred with ropes so you won't fall. And you can cry if you want to, but it won't help, she said, as Max began to sob. Max didn't make the climbing easier. His mutinous weight threw Fred's normal climbing rhythm off, and it was a very slow ascent. He breathed loudly into Fred's ear, and got spit in his hair, and he was heavy. Fred was aching before they were halfway up. He went first, with Con and Lila following his handholds. Twice he went the wrong way, and had to shout down apologies as he retreated and moved sideways, agonisingly slowly, with Max's feet digging into his ribs. You have to shift backwards, but don't look down, he called to the girls. We already did, Con called back. Her voice was strangled with nerves. It wasn't a good idea. Fred shook a beetle off his eye and gripped another handful of vines. He hauled upwards. Slowly, inch by inch, the roots of trees growing down the rock came into clear sight. Then the tip of the rock curved and became an incline with bushes, which became flat land. Fred let out a yell of triumph. Con and Lila followed. Con crawled to the nearest tree and spat a mouthful of bile and saliva and terror and triumph into the roots. "I can't believe we just did that," she gasped. Lila untied Max and gripped him tight in her arms. She was still shaking. "We did it," she whispered in his ear. "Think about how proud Mama and Papa would be. Can we tell them?" As soon as we get home. Their heads were close together, suddenly a pair set apart, and Fred thought for the first time how similar they looked, how Lila's eyes were Max's eyes, and his mouth her mouth. "We're so close now," said Fred. "This is the squiggle, I think." There was something in front of them that looked like it might be a path, or an animal trail, or just an illusion. They hacked through the foliage. An uncomfortable amount of it was knee-high bushes with spikes. Fred's knees became flecked with blood. The ground grew marshy, and tiny flying insects mobbed them, swarming into Fred's mouth and up his nose. Con snorted like a horse, waving hands in both hands in front of her face. "Is it far?" she asked, turning to look at Fred. "I don't know how much of this I can take." But even as she spoke, the ground gave way. It dropped suddenly down, smooth moss on smooth stone. She didn't have time to stop, and cascaded down it on her back, thumping against stones and roots. Fred launched himself after her, scrabbling to stay upright and grabbing at trees. Lila and Max followed, Max on his backside, gasping in shock. They tumbled into a heap at the bottom. Fred's chin connected with someone's ankle. He shoved the ankle away and brushed leaves out of his eyes. Lila scooped Backer into his arms and took hold of Max's elbow. They stood with their backs to a slope at the edge of a vast expanse of stone. It was an enormous stone courtyard, as wide as a hayfield and at least 4 times as long. The ground was built from white and yellow stone blocks, rough-hewn but smooth at the top, and from the passing of many thousands of feet. It was set in a slight dip in the ground, so the earth rose up from it on all sides, forming a natural wall. Down the middle of the great stone courtyard grew 2 rows of trees, creating a boulevard. There were heaps of stone in 5 or 6 places, as if small houses had lined each side. "My God," breathed Lila. Fred took a step forward. Along the trees he could see half-formed stone pillars, some waist-height, some taller than he was. High overhead was a thick canopy of green, forming a roof over the courtyard. "Look," said Fred, "over there." At the far end there was a vast stone wall, half crumbling and covered in passion fruit vines. Lining the wall were 4 immense sculptures, hewn out of wood and stone, and taller than 2 men. Some of the stone had fallen away, but it was possible to see what they had been: a monkey, a panther, a woman, and a man. "It's a city," breathed Lila. The sudden thump of a footstep made Fred spin round, bending down, as he'd done days before, for something to throw. A man stepped from behind one of the stone pillars. He was pointing a knife at them. "Whatever you're thinking of doing," he said, "I would advise against it." And that's the end of the chapter. What a cliffhanger there. Okay, so next chapter tomorrow, 10 o'clock on YouTube. Really miss you all. See you soon.